Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is John Spadafora, CEO of Flower Union Brands. John, it's good to speak to you again. How you been?
Yeah, nice to meet you and nice to hang out with you again.
So what's new at Flower Union? It's been about 11 months since we talked last.
Yes, so since we spoke last, we've expanded. We've added a second product line that's doing very good. We have that in both states. It's a version of our gummy, still strain specific and made from flower, but it involves a fruit puree in the pectin, so we can catch a larger audience than just the people who are looking for the flavor of cannabis. We've launched in New Jersey. That's gone exceptionally well for us, and we're now getting ready for our third market.
What's the third market?
We haven't announced it yet, but it'll be very close to New Jersey. Very be easy to get to from New Jersey. We'll say that.
Very good, very good. So with the new product line expansion, did it take any sort of investment, any new equipment that you had to bring online?
Wasn't equipment. It was more of a response to the market. Our original product line is a gummy. If you remember, it tastes like the cannabis in it, like the terps in the weed. That's done very well, although we've learned, it's really like an IPA. If you think of beer world, and an IPA's got probably the most excited and dedicated segment of the audience, but also probably a similar number of people who don't love the flavor of aggressive hops. We had a similar experience on the flower world, where we've got people who really love that product, but we also knew that we weren't reaching everybody, because there's a lot of people who don't want to taste cannabis when they're eating a gummy. So that new product line was an extension. There was no new equipment there. The next product line, we're actually in R&D on a beverage. So that will be a pretty significant retool for our co-manufacturing partners as we add the equipment for execution on that side.
Yeah, for your edibles, do you still use Azuca's technology?
Yeah, Azuca's technology is really the cornerstone of what we're working with. It's the beauty of our product, what we've learned, the reason it's done well is that it delivers an experience very consistent with inhaling the plant. And because we're using it on flower, and because the way that it works with the terpenes, you really get some very, very different reactions to different cannabis plants in this process. So we're a big fan of the Azuca team. We work very closely with them on the R&D side, as well as as we fine tune our processes state by state. Azuca for us has been an incredible partner.
Yeah, I think they do astonishing work. It's my favorite edibles that are on the market.
What I love about them? I love that they have science. They really understand how and why it works the way it does. And I think so often, a lot of people have tried to solve this edible problem. Edibles are challenging in and of themselves. Like, it's the easiest way for people to consume cannabis, but it's the hardest way to experience it typically, because of the way that it affects you. So, there's a lot of people who've been trying to solve that for a minute, but Azuca, I think, has done a great job of actually having a science-based solution to it, where you're able to replicate great results and you understand why it's working the way that it is. So yeah, we're huge fans of Azuca around here.
Well, and that was a big part of our discussion last time we spoke, was edibles becoming more sessionable, more predictable. In the last year, has that happened?
I think absolutely. I mean, I attended one of the conferences I went to. There was a panel that was talking about fast acting and fast onset and predictable onset as a protection against price sensitivity in each market. And I think if you think of the relationship that so many of us have with this plant, and the fact that we understand how to use it for various purposes, and we're able to use it in ways that can really provide us with a benefit. When you look at something like Azuca, and you can really get the things you're looking for from cannabis, but you're not committing to an all-day exercise, and you're not committing to not necessarily being in control. I really think it's a disruptive technology. I don't think that I think you'll see the market that wants a traditional edible be much, much smaller than the market that is looking for the type of edible that we're able to create with Azuca. And there's some other technologies out there too. Just that unpredictable nature. I think that if you think about the fact that with most edibles, you don't know when it's going to start, you don't know how high you're going to go, and you don't know when it's going to end, that's an unacceptable set of answers. And there's very few parts of our life where we would accept that set of answers. And I think that what we're certainly seeing is that as the market discovers our product, and I'm sure others in similar category, anything that's Wanna Quick and others that are using these items, it becomes a space where consumers really demand this product because it is that level of predictability. So, for me, I like to get a little wild sometimes, but I like to be in control. And sessionability is the key to that. You don't want to eat something and not know what the next 12 hours is going to be like. So, in my opinion, I mean, we've made a pretty big bet in the belief that everybody's going to demand that. As people become aware that that's an option, I think you're going to see that be something that people are going to require. I mean, very few people want to eat something and go to sleep for 12 hours.
No, completely agree. And I think that there is still that, I don't want to call it a myth because it's very real, but there's still that misunderstanding with the average consumer as to what they're getting into.
No, I mean it's funny. Like one of the parts along the sales trail that I'll tell, and it's a true story, is that everybody has that story of that example of their cousin's neighbor's brother's friend who ate a brownie and went to the emergency room because he was freaking out. And whether that was true or not, we've all heard it so many times. And I think it really comes back to the fact, one of the things I've really enjoyed this last year, I spent a tremendous amount of time in store with our store partners. I personally did 181 trainings and pop-ups by myself. The team did a lot more. We did those because we really wanted to understand, especially as we were launching, who was looking for what we were providing. It's different, it was unique, it required a little bit of a sale. And what we kept coming back to and what we kept learning is that predictable nature and the fact that they felt in control. The first stores that really started ripping these units were the ones that figured out they had a whole bunch of soccer moms or conventioneers or people who were here and wanted to have fun and get a little loose, but they weren't looking to commit to an all-day experience. And so I think we're all going to see that trend continue to roll out. I hope we will. I mean, I not just because we're in the space, but because I think it's a better representation of what cannabis actually is. One thing that really kind of cracks me up, and I had the same response when I started. Some of your heaviest consumers in the market, bud tenders or people who work in the industry or people who are just heavy consumers, a lot of times they will shy away from edibles because of the feeling of being out of control. And cannabis is such a special plant that once you understand terpene content and cannabinoids, you can get to the experience you're looking for. And I think that level of control is what so many people really appreciate about the plant, whether they kind of are vocalizing that or not. I think the ability to bring that is key.
Will you be able to maintain that type of sessionability, predictability, and control as you enter the beverage market? Because again, I'm coming from Madison, Wisconsin here, and you get an unregulated THC beverage up here, and you really don't know what you're getting into.
No, it's a terrible answer. Yes, the short answer is I think that's the biggest opportunity for us, that Americans have learned how to self-medicate for years with liquids, whether that's a couple of beers at the baseball game, whether that's a gin and tonic after work or a glass of Chardonnay when you put the kids to bed. We've learned as a people how to use that to relax and how to control that, right? And there's people who take it too far, but we're also all pretty comfortable knowing how many beers we can have if we go to the barbecue with our friends and we're there for a few hours and we got to drive home after a period of time. To me, I'm drinking a hot tea with one of our gummies melted in it. This is something that I figured out, they have a delicious sweetness to them, but what that delivers, if you think of the intoxication arc that we find with our gummies, and because it mirrors that onset of smoking, it comes on very quickly. It's peaks in that first 45 minutes, and then it goes away in that, depending on your tolerance, hour to 2 hour period. It's not dissimilar to the coaching that we've gone through all along with having a couple gin and tonics at the happy hour or a couple of beers at the barbecue. I believe that when we can get into beverage, that's going to be probably our largest jump forward, because I think you finally connected the dots. I think one of the challenges with cannabis beverages, like you said, the unpredictability of it makes them scary. It's as Americans, when you're at a social setting, if you're at a happy hour or a mixer or you're on a date, you're not looking to get completely blasted. And a lot of times a single THC beverage will do that to you, where you don't know that you're going to be forming sentences the way you want to, or you're going to be as kind of lucid. So I think this technology in drink form really is its best use, because I think it really mirrors with, again, how we as Americans have just been conditioned to self-medicate for a long time.
So where are you at in the R&D process, and how is developing a beverage product different from developing an edible product?
Well, so full disclosure, the majority of our energy right now is on the gummies. Those are growing so quickly that really kind of making sure that the recipe is perfect and we're executing that at our highest and best is number one. Our partners at Azuca have done great work and are really spearheading the homogeneity R&D, which is the key to it, right? We sell someone a beverage, we want to make sure that the potency is accurate, that if they drink half that beverage, they're going to get half the potency, that it's consistent. So they've been, working with a team that's got such a science-based approach to life has made them very good. I think that we're comfortable we're comfortable with the application to know that we're ready to go on a homogeneity standpoint. Honestly, right now, it's been a question of best use of time and resources. Is it continue to drive more stores into the family as we with the original product, or deploy those towards the beverage, or go to state three? And it's really going to be kind of a combination of all those. So, to launch a beverage, it requires packaging, requires different equipment, requires some different level of training at the store level. Fortunately, I think we've done a good job of connecting with the consumer in a lot of our stores, and so we think there'll be a translation from one product to the other. But we've been majoritively focused on the gummies at this point. That's our bread and butter. I think that the beverages are the biggest up and the biggest opportunity. How that form factor looks right now, we're looking at a lot of different things, from cocktail, kind of a mixer that would be a single serve, go through and add it to something to create a beverage, all the way to an RTD in a can. And I think that's really just going to be we've got more work to do on our side before we figure out which one we're bringing.
So when you're doing the 181 trainings and pop-ups, is that more brand building? Is that more fact finding? And what has worked best for you in the last year?
It's really both. I think that one thing we've always felt was important is that you had to connect with the team at the store. And that's more than just going by and high-fiving them once and saying, hey, here's some samples. This product requires a lot of knowledge. It requires an understanding of what's going on and why we want that to go on. So, those trainings, those pop-ups give us the ability to interact with people in a meaningful way. But I think they also, they provide a lot of valuable feedback. One of the questions we didn't know last time I spoke to you, we thought we knew, we had some ideas, and many of them were right, a couple of them were not, is who wants to buy this? Who would give this a chance? I think one thing we've seen is that edible consumers are typically creatures of habit. There's not a lot of variation in their purchases. My belief is that's because most edibles suck. And once you find the one that works for you, you're like, okay, this one works for me. I'm not going to risk something else. Whereas if you think of a flower or a hash consumer, there's a lot of excitement about trying new products and brands, because you're not really worried. You might not make a great purchase. It may not be worth the dollars, or you may miss something you've had in the past, but one's not going to affect you really in a negative way. As we were really understanding how we needed to craft our messaging around the product and how to explain the different nuances of what was going on, it was critically important that we were in store talking to the people who were buying them on the consumer level, but also the people who were selling them. And so we could understand, are there concerns that are coming up that we need to address? One of the ones that we addressed through those conversations was the addition of the fruit line, because we found that pretty much universally the effect was something people loved. But while there's people who love the flavor and seek it out, there's people who don't want to eat weed, and they're not used to that. And so and then even once we're in a store, we use that as an opportunity to really understand who are the consumers who like this product and why do they like it, so that we again can speak to them in a way that makes sense. And when I speak about consumers, we speak all the way, we call them psychographics, and it's really about how people think as opposed to demographics, how old they are, or where they live, or what kind of money they make. We found that consumers who are big fans of the plant love this product. That makes a lot of sense. We expected that one. It doesn't replace their experience with the plant. It's more of a discreet way to have it when they need to have it. We found that consumers who are incredibly focused on their own health, and they would prefer to go to a Whole Foods as opposed to a Kroger. They really want to know what they're putting in their body. They care about what they're putting in their body. Our original product is a 7-ingredient gummy, and everything is very clean. The fruit gummy can be as many as 10 ingredients, but again, everything's a plant, everything is clean. That really resonates with that audience. We found that people who love big flavor, we call them our flavor forward folks. So if they're into IPAs, or they're into cool restaurants or gastronomy or any of those things, the nuance of flavor in this product is going to be really important. And to that audience, because of our time in store, we started adding flavor descriptor words to the front of our unflavored gummies, so that you might know it tastes like sweet pine and berries, or it tastes like, funky sour grapes, right? Like those are both description we've used. And again, you think about if you taste a whiskey and I tell you you're going to smell leather and you're going to taste, vanilla, as you go through and your palate experiences that, it takes the experience to be a really fun thing where you start leaning into what else do I see in there, and you kind of start to appreciate the artistry of it. So I really think that those times that we spent in the store were critical. And we're still doing it. Obviously, that's not something that ends, but just to be able to interact and understand why consumers were giving us a chance. We're one of the more expensive items on the shelf, and that's because there's a lot of premium ingredients that go into it. And so it was critically important for us to know not just what was working, but what wasn't, and so that we could go back and either fix it in the product side of things or fix it in the communication on the product side of things.
I understand how to collect demographic information. How do you collect psychographic information?
We asked people what resonated with them, like what was important to them, and we learned there was a lot of parts. I mean, another audience group that we really connected with, and I love it because I think this is kind of where I live, is we call them old school consumers, and they're really people who had a great relationship with the plant for a lot of their life, and then life changed. They've got kids, or they've got a pain in the ass neighbor, or whatever. They shouldn't smoke anymore, and so being able to really connect with the plant is a really nostalgic opportunity because, again, not a lot of edibles reminded you of smoking a joint with your friends. Not a lot of edibles could deliver that experience or that flavor. Um, so you learn about how people think based on what they tell you. We ask them what they think. We also base it on where we discover them. We spend a lot of time and energy working with companies like Surfside to do very targeted, specific marketing based on people's behavior outside of the store. And so we know that if people attend yoga and Pilates and are outdoorsy, that this is a product that may resonate with them. And we've done that, first by meeting people in store and learning that these were other areas of their life they valued. And then by sending specific marketing to people who value those things and seeing that pay off. It's been a big trial and error dance that we're certainly not through yet. But we've really connected with a lot of audience groups who we find are just huge fans of what we're doing. And it really comes down to being able to explain it. I'll give you an example. When we first started, we said all the time, true to the plant, true to the plant, true to the plant. And we do think that we are true to the plant. But one thing that we learned through spending time in stores, specifically in ones with high levels of tourists and people who are going to concerts or baseball games, they wanted something that was true to the plant that I understood, meaning they wanted something that was going to hit them quickly, that they would understand. If I'm going to go to a concert with some friends and I want to smoke some Oreos because it'll make me laugh like the village idiot, right? Like that's the experience I'm looking for. Or I want some ice cream cakes, I'm going to sleep, or I want some sour tea because I got to focus. But that consumer didn't understand that strain specific meant it was going to steer them where they wanted to go. What they really understood is that they wanted it to be a predictable product. So how we communicate that it's predictable is completely based on where we find them. If we find you in one of our more traditional cannabis heavy audiences, we're going to talk about terpenes and strain specific effects. But if we find you in somewhere that's in the suburbs or somewhere that, as a yoga studio, we're going to talk more about predictability and sessionability and probably not mention strain specific. What we realize is that both of those audiences are looking for that same outcome. They just use different verbiage to get there. So again, it was really a lot of talking and listening and seeing what else people were excited about and really, finding where we could connect with that community in a way that was meaningful and authentic to them. It wasn't just a ad we were serving them when they were buying something. It was more about being part of the events that I think are important to them. Part of the events where they feel free and they feel like they connect with their body and they connect with nature. And if we can be part of that and we can elevate that experience, it becomes a great way to connect with that consumer.
Mention dealing with that pain in the ass neighbor. It made me think of my neighbors, and I couldn't think of one. So I'm like, oh God, I'm not the pain in the ass neighbor, am I?
I hope not. If you can't find it, if you look around and there's no one you're looking at, they may be looking at you.
I think we're just, we just got a really good tribe. I think it's just, we're all good. We're all good.
It's a well curated block.
That's right.
The rest of it on to.
So you entered the adult use market in New Jersey of April of last year. You're almost a year in. What are your thoughts on that market, and how is the New Jersey market in serving it? Is it any different than Colorado?
It is significantly different than Colorado. There's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of differences. We love it. What we found in New Jersey is that it certainly is not easy. It's not a gimme. I think that there were probably times when it might have been those things. There's a lot of brands there, and there's a lot of fierce pride about locality, and people are appreciative of the brands that are homegrown in that space for sure. That said, we put a lot of energy into doing it right. Last year we launched at MJ Impact at the end of April. So really, we say April, but I think the first batch was done April 28th. It was really March. I'm sorry, May. Between MJ Impact and the end of the year, I personally was 16 trips from Colorado to New Jersey. And during those trips, I would go between 2 and 4 days, and I would meet with 15 to 25 stores a day, depending on the geographic range I was covering. And those were a mixture of people we're selling to, people we wanted to sell to, people who, we've not yet sold to. And the Jersey market is really exciting to me. One, I was concerned that there might not be as much awareness of the plant that they would appreciate the product we were bringing. When I first started coming, there were a lot of distillate pens. You didn't see a lot of rosin. You didn't see a lot of those products. That's changed, which I love seeing. I found that to be completely wrong. You've got a very educated consumer there who really understands their plants. You've got a lot of great brands that are focusing on the right things. There's a tremendous amount of great flower in that state. I think that I've told a few people in Colorado who are not happy to hear it that I think you've got a greater chance of picking a random eighth off of a shelf in New Jersey and picking something great than you do in Colorado. I think that's partially based on the fact that there's still a lot of revenue in New Jersey, so people can afford to do it right all the time. They're not worried about price. Colorado has been a bit of a different journey. I think specifically because there's so many brands and there's production, so much production going on here. And honestly, it's built for a market that's much larger than what we have. And so what Colorado's become really price sensitive and based on price first and foremost. Whereas Jersey, we saw a willingness and a desire to try things. Price is important, but it's not the sole driving factor. So I have absolutely loved New Jersey. Like I said, we're leaning very heavily into it. We're growing exponentially in New Jersey. We just released our fourth drop. Each one has gotten larger. We are currently at 28 stores, and that's because we've sold out the first three drops through that amount. So, I think we're looking to add, I believe we'll add somewhere between 5 and 7 on this drop. And that kind of steady growth has been really important for us. We've worked very closely with our store partners in New Jersey to make sure that all the little things were done, the staff was educated, the things were merchandised properly, and that we worked with them to engage the audience to drive sampling. And that methodology has paid off very well for us there. So yeah, we're excited. We're going to continue to grow in New Jersey. I think New Jersey's got a lot of upside. And I think that I love the quality of product. I love the energy around it too. I was just the phone call I was on before we got on this call was with one of our store partners inviting us to join them in their 420 activation. Their 420 activation is a communal thing. I think there's like 25 stores. It's a consumption event in a Sheraton ballroom. And I think about, from a state level, the willingness to let people be people and not be so concerned about people smoking weed in a hotel ballroom. Colorado is light years behind New Jersey already with respect to consumption opportunities. There's a couple of lounges here. It's very challenging. And so I think that openness and that willingness to work with the plant and to create a place for brands and consumers to interact. New Jersey's been just a godsend for us. It's really kind of reinvigorated us as a team to see the response there.
Did you pick New Jersey because of New Jersey, or did you pick New Jersey because of the potential proximity to that next market you're looking at?
Proximity is important. I think that we picked New Jersey first. There's a couple of reasons. One is that it wasn't so big it would be impossible to cover. I have on those sales trips, there have been days where I started in Jersey City and I had meetings all the way to Cape May, and then I went to Philly and I ended in Jersey City. It was a really long day, but it was a day that was doable. So I liked that. We liked the way that New Jersey had written their rules in a way that we felt it wasn't so exclusive that people couldn't get there and you wouldn't have a lot of good products, but it also wasn't so overbuilt that it was going to be in a situation of continual downward spiral that we see in Colorado or I hear about in California or Oregon or any of these early markets. I also really liked as we were looking at different markets that we wanted to go to. Yeah, honestly, the fact that New Jersey hosts MJ Impact and New Jersey hosts NECANN was important to us because I felt like that was a great opportunity to really catch a lot of the market in an efficient way. And I thought that, it speaks to, again, the state taking a very positive approach to embracing this this product and the audience around it. There's a lot of places where you go and it's hard to find a place to smoke with someone. It's hard to find a place to be able to get the community together, or the market's so old and challenged, and it's just people are barely hanging on that energy doesn't really exist. So when we went in and saw that New Jersey had so many things, it had a growing footprint of stores, it had an educated, I love walking into stores in New Jersey. I tell the team around here, I feel like there's a 75% chance you walk into a store in New Jersey and you can meet a GM or an owner or a purchasing manager who's excited about product. All those things, you can just feel that energy for what they're doing. All those things, the middle of my first job out of college was actually in New Jersey. I worked at the Borgata in Atlantic City when it first opened. And I'll never forget one of the things they were so excited about when I worked at Borgata, they were adamant that we were not competing with Atlantic City casinos. We were competing with Las Vegas. And what we were really doing was working to convince, the 45 or 75 million adults of gambling age within a 3-hour drive of Atlantic City, that it was a better investment to drive 3 hours to Atlantic City to come to our property than it was to fly across the country. I thought that was a really unique thing to have that many people who are living a busy life and have resources and have access to New Jersey and who pass through that state so frequently. I felt it was a really great place to build a brand and connect with a lot of people.
Well, talking about sort of networking, and you've mentioned MJ Unpacked a number of times, how has that trade show served to help grow the Flower Union brand or brands portfolio? And, is it because of the region that it's in? Is it because of the leadership at the trade show staff? What is it that makes it stand apart?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think you've got a welcoming community. It's last year, I'll give you an example. One of the things we did at the show last year was we were a sponsor of their after party, which meant that we were able to hand out samples and share them with people and tell our story. It happened in an amusement park that was operating, and there were 20 cannabis brands that were able to legally sample consumers and share their story. So that, is critically important. And one of the things that drives me crazy, if you ever want to get me on a soapbox, every Thursday, Friday, Saturday in every major city around this country, you can go into any liquor store and be served enough sample tequila, vodka, beer or wine to be unsafe to drive. And you cannot go into a dispensary and get a half-gram joint or a gummy, which any of these companies that are doing pop-ups would be happy to present. There's just such a double standard for how we treat alcohol and cannabis. And I think you've got a market in New Jersey that wants people. Atlantic City needs visitors, and they see this as an opportunity. So I think it starts at the state level. I think more than that, the team behind MJ Impact has done a really good job of creating events where you actually have opportunities to interact with people you want to talk to, right? There's natural collision points throughout the day where they're putting people who need each other's services together, and they're creating a comfortable environment. I like the size of them. There's a lot of people, but there's not so many people that you get distracted and lost. There's other conventions that are great that I go to, that I've seen you at, that are so busy with so many people going on in such exciting environments that everyone's got their own after party and everyone's got their own thing going on. And I think MJ Impact does a great job of creating a conduit where throughout the course of the day, from the convention floor through the after parties, through the networking events, through the session, the seminars, they're relevant. And I think that I know that I've been able to use my attendance at all the MJ Impacts to grow my business, which is ultimately why you would go to a convention. So I think it's a combination of both. I think your consumers there too are excited about the product and they attend. I think that's also obviously the most important. If you were in an audience that wasn't going to pay to come and wasn't going to show up, then it doesn't matter how welcoming the location is or how great the team put together. So when you combine those three things, that you've got a welcoming audience or a welcoming location, you've got structure that is really created for business to be able to do business. And then you also have an audience that's enthusiastic about seeing what's out there. That's a pretty good combination that lends itself towards those things being very, very fruitful.
As you're targeting potential launches at the show, when does that groundswell begin? Like, when do you start your plan of attack for MJ Unpacked? And how do you build towards that as you get close to the show?
Sure. Well, right now we're working on it for this year already. I think that It depends on what your goals are, right? So I've gone to these with the goal of, hey, I just want to meet the market. I want to read the market, and I hope to meet some people that I can start my conversations about who would produce this, what would that look like? That's certainly done those shows. That's a much milder, easier one to prepare for. It's just basically showing up and talking to people and being nice, with an intention of what you want to do. Last year was a sprint. We were working with our co-manufacturing partner to get our product produced and through the testing process in order to have samples for MJ Impact, and literally slid underneath the tag. I think we got the green light on the Thursday before the show started the following Tuesday. So literally like just perfectly threaded that needle. And in that case, I think we had some signage on the floor to generate some awareness. I spent a lot of time meeting people in the market, both cultivators and stores. And then we had some strategic sponsor the after party, share some samples. This year, we're going to be doing, this year we've got clients there. We've got a good list of clients that we've been working with for a year that we really like. So we're going to spend some time interacting with them. We're also hoping to meet and be able to tell our story to more retailers. So we've really kind of taken a point of saying, hey, what's an attractant? How do we go through and create an experience on the floor that lends itself to that, where we can start signing up, our next set of retailers for New Jersey or for our next state, and working through some of those logistics, but also keeping it fun, entering the competitions. This year is going to be a really good time. We're going to have a little bit of a team there. We've got, some staff on the ground there, and we're going to be able to do some of those high five moments as a group where it's not just scrambling, hoping we can make it, but it's okay. We've gone through, we found there's people who care about us. We're selling through. Let's enjoy these moments. I think it's so easy for us to make conventions and make those opportunities all about work and networking. And that's important. That's why we're there. But I think it's also really important that we take time to celebrate the things we've done and say, hey, at that point, we're going to be a year old in that market. We're growing market share every month. That's a positive thing. So we're going to use it on all kinds of levels, as just a community building point. And I think that's what it comes down to be. And not being too salesy. I think we're not trying to sell something every moment. I think we're very proud of our story. We're happy to tell our story. And if the story resonates and works for a lot of people, certainly there's some that it maybe doesn't, and that's okay too. So I think for us, it's about creating those natural environments where it's just fun to be there, and where we can connect to that audience, people we want to speak to. So this year it'll be about door extension mostly, but also more cultivators. I mean, one thing that's cool about this product is we love showing it to cultivators who typically don't pay a lot of attention to the edible market because it's just so far removed from what they're doing. I really enjoyed sharing this with some of the best cultivators in all these markets because they're kind of like, oh my God, they taste the flavors that they smell in the garden, and that really speaks to them. So for us, this is just it's just a jumping off point. We want to be part of the community. That's it.
What competitions are you looking at participating in?
I can't. MJ Impact sponsors one. I want to say it's the Cannabis Cup. And we take a pretty interesting approach to it because most of the cultivators we're working with will be submitting product for that. So as we're looking at our fifth round of production, which will be the one ready to go before MJ Impact, we're actually leaning into saying, hey, if you're going to submit this strain, let's make a gummy out of it as well. So we'll have that ability. Hopefully some of those cultivation partners win some awards. We'll have award-winning strains in the gummies. And then we're also going to be submitting our gummy as well. I think that you talked about the excitement of doing what we're doing. We truly think this is a disruptive product. We think that, because of what Azuca allows us to deliver from an experience standpoint, that as people discover this type of product, this is the edible that they're looking for. And so, a great way to put eyes on it when you're able to, because we're using a single source product, it makes it pretty exciting from a competition standpoint.
Have you run into any issues with your co-manufacturing partners in terms of consistency, manufacturability, and reliability?
Yeah, listen, I think that like any relationship, there's growing pains. So like if anybody tells you that it's just perfect all the time, they're either lying or their process is so simple that you shouldn't be paying a premium for whatever it is they're doing. What we're doing is really hard to do, right? Like we're not adding any concentrates to our gummies. So to get to a yield that we're looking for that makes the numbers make sense, that requires that we have a really great adherence to the SOP along the way. We've had to go back and look at our SOPs and say, is there things that we need to communicate better, or there are measurements we need to take along the way so that we as a group can make sure that we're doing that correctly. We've had to, I say had to is the wrong word because we've got a great co-manufacturing partner, but we did switch our co-manufacturing partner. Our original group that we were working with, really great people, they were growing as well. I think we were so excited to enter the market that we joined someone who was also establishing their own business and had multiple brands growing as well. So I think that now that we've been down that road, understanding what we are looking for in a co-manufacturing partner is really important. And what I love about the group we're with right now is that nothing's ever always perfect, right? I'm sure that I'm not perfect. I know that they're not perfect, but we have a very good relationship where I'm able to pick up the phone and have a great conversation of, hey, this was concerning for me. The yield didn't hit this, or this timeline was the challenge. And we've been able to work through, well, that's because it's something we did or didn't do, or something they did or didn't do, and just streamline the process. We really focus on looking for professionals that want to do great work and build something that we can build on. And so again, these type of events are where you get to spend time with people and not just hear their sales pitch, but see them and how they interact and how people respond to them. And there's not a more important decision as you enter a market than the co-manufacturing partner you're working with.
Well, and as you've had this success that you've experienced since opening in New Jersey, and I understand that you're gearing up for expansion to another nearby market that shall go unnamed. Does it have you looking at similar territories just that are kind of fit that New Jersey footprint and just understanding like, oh, this is what it could be, if we moved somewhere else?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you should hear me on my calls with the team at Pistol or when we look at those different things, because it's why is this working and where else would it work, right? Like once you've read the book and you found that fit, certainly expanding on that is the fastest road for growth for all of us. And I think that, a lot of our success in New Jersey I made the analogy the other day that I feel like Colorado for us was like high school, right? We were kind of figuring out who we were. We had our awkward moments. We made our mistakes. People remember the day that we, showed up to class and forgot our belt and we're dealing with our pants all day, whatever went on in high school. Jersey for us has really been college. And that we came in, we still grew and we still learned and we made mistakes, but we really had a much better idea of who we were and we were able to focus on executing to that level. I think for us, it taught us how to roll out a new market. So as we look to future markets, following that methodology and finding those similarities that made us successful in one type of store or city, and how we approach that. Yeah, that's a lot of this year has been leaning into understanding those pieces so that we don't make the same. I'm trying to make new mistakes. Every year I want to make new mistakes and less of the mistakes we've made in the past.
It's remarkable sometimes how long you've been in an industry and you can still surprise yourself every once in a while with a new mistake.
Oh yeah. No, that's great. Like I get excited when we make a new mistake and we solve it. It's really frustrating when you make an old mistake again. And not that we don't do that from time to time, but yeah, new mistakes are a win. And yeah.
Not to get too much into the regulatory side of the industry, I always like to ask, because no one can really make a solid prediction about what's going to happen next. What are your thoughts on the regulatory landscape as it stands right now? I mean, it seems like we're always in hurry up and wait mode. And it's very nebulous.
Are you talking about like from a federal level or just these, federally, listen, this is one of the most important things to me and to you and to people who are in this industry. My belief, I think many of us felt like we would have seen some sort of movement many, many years ago. And it feels to me like there's just so many fires burning in that barn that we're not, and we won't be for a long time, the most important one. And so, I do think there's going to be some positive things that could come from a reschedule. I also think a reschedule is the stupidest fucking, I don't know if I can say that, the stupidest decision that, I cuss a lot. I always cuss. I think it's horrible. I think that rescheduling is the wrong move. I think it should be descheduled. I think that we as an industry should be screaming from the mountaintops, regulate us like alcohol. There's a framework in place where they have the ability to collect taxes and keep it out of underage hands and track and trace. If you think about the challenges that we've endured as legal operators for so many years and having to be single state produced and distributed, and then dealing with hemp derived products that don't have to follow those rules and are a little bit different, it's been a disaster. I think what you've got left are survivors who worked hard and who are either really hard-headed or really smart, or maybe some combination of the two sometimes. I hope that we get to a spot where there's a federal guidance where we're not fighting against an unnamed or an unidentified set of rules that no one else has to play against. But I think that the ability to navigate those and thrive, especially for the people who've taken the time to, like you said, find the similarities between markets and then focus on those places where you don't have to do everything different every time. And better operators. And so I hope there'll be a positive outcome. But I don't have any hope that we're going to see any sort of great relief from a federal level until there's a lot of larger issues that are solved. We're fighting wars, we've got Epstein file issues, we've got inflation. They've got a lot of things that I think are going to take a lot of priority over cannabis. While cannabis is super important to you and me and to a lot of other people, for your average American, I don't think it bubbles into the top 5 or 10 things they're concerned about. And unfortunately, as long as we continue to have more chaos that adds that growing list, I don't see us getting our situation solved anytime soon.
No, I completely agree. The only thing that I'm encouraged by is that, like, as they're setting new fires in the barn, cannabis seems to be that, like, I guess, haystack on the outside that they just kind of like throw a match into to distract everybody from the barn on fire.
100%. It's like you kind of hope. It's funny, like I've heard that thought too, and I agree with it. Like you would think that as these fires burn, here's a way to make a positive impact from a tax revenue standpoint. But I just feel like there's so much division in lots of other areas that the nobody's been willing to take that step. To me, it feels like a very easy win, but I also understand I'm one of the people who could win from that. Maybe that's why it feels that way.
Right? Like, hey, this is all terrible, but look, poof, 500,000 new jobs. There you go. No.
I tell you, I spent 15 years running bars, nightclubs, and working in hotels at a very high level, and ran some big nightclubs. I mean, clubs that had 5,000 people a night come through them. And the shit show of dealing with individuals who are doing that on a nightly basis compared to what you deal with in a cannabis environment is so very, very different. I don't think I haven't seen a single fight at a single cannabis event yet. I'm sure there has been one somewhere at some point. I haven't seen it. I know that even while running nightclubs that were, producing $500,000 a night in revenue 15 years ago, that was a regular occurrence. It was something we had to plan for and something we had to be prepared for. It just blows my mind how we continue to be so vilified when the realities of what we're doing and the realities of how people behave when they're using this product compared to other things. It's just, if I was a politician, I would be trying to get everybody stoned. Honestly, I think that there's people who are generally friendlier, they're more tolerant, and they're in a way where just more present. And I think that's what most of us should be trying to fight to do anyway.
Right? We need another great American smoking.
Right? Maybe I should run for president. Who knows?
Oh my God. Be a welcome relief. I'll help with the campaign. Let's get on.
Yeah, perfect. I don't know if that's a win.
Well, I really do appreciate you taking the time, John. And I apologize. I'm a little out of practice. It's been a few months since we've done one of these. But it was really great to have you on again. And just wanted to know, is there anything else you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience, knows about yourself or your work at Flower Union?
Well, listen, first of all, thank you for having me again. I'm also out of practice. I've been so focused on the sales trail. I hope that this wasn't too much of a sales talk. I'm excited about this product and I'm excited about what it does. And so, I would just say that the message to the audience, I think that there's products out there that are really looking to match what we all love about this plant. And it's not just ours, there's other ones out there too. So, I think that we've met so many people along the lane who came into the conversation of hating edibles and didn't think edibles were good because they had a horrible experience early. And I don't think it's just relies on edibles. There's people who've taken dabs and had a horrible experience. There's people who, whatever, right? I think that as you see markets and you see products evolve, keep trying different things because it's been really fun to interact with so many different people who were like, you know what, I thought I hated edibles. I've never had a great experience. This is something I love, and I think that's really exciting. And I think that as we see cannabis continue to evolve and so many smart companies like Azuca able to take the science and learn things from it, the products that come our way are just getting better and better. And I think that the brands that care, there's a lot of people who are out there doing this for the right reasons. So it's been really refreshing for me to see all those people come back to edibles and say, hey, I thought I hated those. I thought that wasn't a good thing. These are actually really cool. I'm sure there's people who tried ours and said, I hate those as well. And that's fine. Listen, different strokes, different folks, but keep an open mind. That's one thing I love about that. You said that the state of New Jersey, what we've loved about going there. I love the excitement and the open mind that you're seeing from these consumers of, hey, I'd love to try something new. And that's what's so cool. We're still in the first inning of this game, I think. And there's a lot more in front of us. There's gonna be a lot more new things come out and a lot more excitement in front of us.
And I didn't think it came off too sales or pitchy at all. Like, because, the nature of this podcast is more of a business to business or B2B podcast, right? So we're trying to figure out what's working for you. So that way everybody listening can try and figure out how they can make it work for them. And for that, you did everything today.
Appreciate that. Well, I'll tell you, all that worked for us was humility, right? Going into every conversation, knowing that we had an idea, but not thinking that we ever really knew it. And that's why I did all those trainings. That's why the team is on those trainings then. And that's what's worked for us. Like, I think really listening is why we're growing. So thank you for the opportunity, man. Really appreciate talking to you and looking forward to seeing you. I'm sure I'll see you at MJ Impact, but I'll see you before then.
No, that sounds great to me. And please, as more news comes out and maybe we hear a little bit more about that state, please keep us informed. We'd love to share it with our audience.
We'll do that. As soon as we get a signed contract, we're going to scream it from the rooftops.
Excellent. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. For John Spadafora, CEO of Flower Union Brands, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we will see you next week.
Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.